You know that feeling when you hear your national anthem? That surge of emotion and belonging? Well, today we're diving into something fascinating: how three Southeast Asian nations used sound to define their very identity. We'll explore how Thailand, Cambodia, and Vietnam wielded music and sound as tools of sovereignty, and how these sonic battles continue to shape the region today.
And it's such a rich topic because sound has always been central to how these nations see themselves and each other. The way they've used everything from traditional music to radio broadcasts has literally helped shape their borders and identities.
I'm really curious about when this all started. When did sound become such a powerful political tool in Southeast Asia?
Well, it's fascinating. It really kicked into high gear between 1890 and 1950 when sound recording technology first arrived in the region. Suddenly, these nations could capture and preserve their cultural heritage in a whole new way.
That must have been revolutionary for them.
Absolutely. And you know what's really interesting? These early recordings weren't just about preserving music, they became tools for defining national identity. Each country started using them to stake cultural claims.
How did that play out between these three countries specifically?
Well, take Thailand and Cambodia, for instance. Their border disputes have been going on for decades, and cultural claims, including music and traditional performances, have been a huge part of that tension.
Really? I had no idea border disputes could be about sound.
Oh, yes. According to recent research, these disputes often centered around cultural heritage sites where traditional ceremonies and music were performed. The Preah Vihear Temple is a perfect example.
Tell me more about that. What happened there?
Well, when the temple was listed as a UN World Heritage Site in 2008, it sparked fresh disputes. Both countries claimed not just the physical space, but the cultural traditions, including the music and ceremonies associated with it.
That's fascinating. And how did Vietnam fit into all this?
Vietnam's role is particularly interesting because they approached cultural identity differently. During the Cold War period, they used radio broadcasts and traditional music as tools of national unity.
Was that effective?
Incredibly so. The research shows that these broadcasts helped create a sense of shared identity during a really turbulent time.
You mentioned traditional music. How important was that in this whole dynamic?
It was crucial. Each country used their traditional music to reinforce their cultural distinctiveness. But here's what's fascinating. Many of these musical traditions actually shared common roots.
So they were emphasizing differences that maybe weren't as clear-cut as they claimed?
Exactly. The research shows that Southeast Asian musical traditions often crossed borders naturally, but political tensions led to attempts to nationalize certain styles.
That's kind of ironic, isn't it?
It really is. And you know what makes it even more interesting? Modern technology has made it harder to maintain these artificial divisions.
How so?
Well, with digital recording and sharing, these musical traditions are crossing borders again. Young artists are mixing styles from all three countries, challenging those old political boundaries.
That must be creating some interesting tensions.
Definitely. The research shows that governments are still trying to control their national sound, but social media and online platforms make that increasingly difficult.
Let's talk about some specific examples. What kinds of sound were these countries trying to claim as their own?
Well, in Thailand, they particularly focused on traditional court music. They used it to establish a kind of cultural authority.
And Cambodia?
Cambodia emphasized their ancient temple ceremonies and the sounds associated with them. These became powerful symbols of national identity.
What about Vietnam's approach?
Vietnam took a different route. They focused more on folk music and revolutionary songs, using them to unite people across different regions.
That's really interesting how each country had its own strategy.
And what's fascinating is how these strategies evolved over time. During the Cold War, for instance, Thailand's approach changed significantly.
How so?
Well, according to the research, Thailand started incorporating more Western influences into their traditional music as part of their alignment with the US.
That must have created some interesting hybrid forms.
Absolutely. And these hybrids became their own kind of political statement, a way of showing Thailand's modernization and Western connections.
Were there any unexpected consequences of all this cultural competition?
One of the most interesting was how it actually preserved some traditions that might have otherwise been lost. The political emphasis on national sounds led to better documentation.
So something positive came out of the tension?
Yes, though it's complicated. While some traditions were preserved, others were changed or simplified to fit political narratives.
How are these dynamics playing out today?
Well, modern technology has really changed the game. Social media and digital platforms have made it much harder to maintain strict cultural boundaries.
Are governments still trying to control their national sound?
They are, but it's becoming increasingly difficult. Young musicians especially are crossing these boundaries all the time.
That must be creating some interesting new forms.
Absolutely. We're seeing fascinating fusions of traditional styles from all three countries, often with modern elements mixed in.
How are the governments responding to that?
It varies. Some are trying to embrace it as a form of soft power, while others are more resistant. But the trend seems unstoppable.
Do you think this will eventually lead to more cultural understanding between these countries?
The research suggests it might. These musical exchanges are creating new connections and challenging old rivalries.
That's encouraging to hear.
Though we shouldn't oversimplify, there are still significant political tensions that music alone can't solve.
Right, of course. But it's interesting how sound can be both a source of conflict and connection.
Exactly. And that dual nature makes it such a powerful force in shaping these relationships.
What do you think the future holds for these sonic relationships?
Based on current trends, we're likely to see even more mixing and sharing of musical traditions, despite political tensions.
That's fascinating. And maybe hopeful?
I think so. Music has a way of transcending political boundaries, even when those boundaries seem insurmountable.
As we wrap up, what's the big takeaway from all this?
I think it's that sound and music are never just cultural, they're deeply political tools that can both divide and unite.
And maybe understanding that helps us better understand these countries' relationships?
Exactly. When we listen to the music of Southeast Asia, we're not just hearing melodies, we're hearing history, politics, and identity all woven together.
That's really powerful. And I think it gives us a whole new way to understand these complex relationships.
It does. And it reminds us that sometimes the most important political statements aren't made with words, but with sound.
Well, that brings us to the end of today's episode. Next time you hear music from Southeast Asia, listen not just for the melody, but for the history and politics woven into every note. Thanks for joining us.